the power steering pump line that goes from the top of the power steering pump on this Isuzu 2.6 liter. Now I realize lots of people probably don't have these anymore, but if you do, and you have a pup with a 2.6 liter in it, an Isuzu pup pickup truck, or you have something like a 1990 or a 89 or 92, 93 possibly. They might have changed them by that year. But I know that it fits the Amigo from 89 to 94, which is the first gen Amigo, 89 to 94. And then the Rodeos, which are probably the most common, maybe not anymore, but used to be, right around the same years. And so as long as it came with a 2.6 liter 4-cylinder, which is Honda or Isuzu, because you can buy a head gasket to fit a Honda Passport or an Isuzu pickup truck. The only difference is they changed the valve cover to say Honda rather than Isuzu on the top of the valve cover. But it was the same 2.6 liter engine. And the power steering line, there seems to be controversy surrounding the aftermarket power steering line, which of course it's all you can get these days. So they do go out, because ours just went out. And you know, I mean, this thing's probably been on here since the early 90s. So, and we're in 2023, so you know something's going to give. But anyway, our power steering line down here looks like this. This would be the return, I guess, line.
Front pump.
Front pump line, major front pump line. This doodad right here goes on the top right here on the power steering pump, if you can see in there. That's the power steering pump. You can pick the pump up still at the auto parts store. And it looks like we have some kind of, looks like AC O-rings that somebody put on here from the past, probably the previous owner way back when. And then it came with a 17 millimeter nut that went on top. That's what fits this nut. And so you'd put that apparatus on, much like a brake caliper, and tighten it down. And O-rings would hold this thing in place. Well, there's a controversy now, because the aftermarket doesn't come with O-rings. It comes with brass crush sleeves or brass washers, and it wants you to put one at the bottom and one at the top to crush that thing in place, sort of like a brake caliper. Like when you tighten down anything to do with your brakes, you have a brass or a copper crush sleeve, one on the top, one at the bottom, and then you kind of sandwich it in between, and that's supposed to make you seal. Now, we haven't tried this new line yet, but we're going to find out if that method actually works so that it doesn't deceive the public or the average shade tree mechanic. It shouldn't, but some people, there are many bad reviews on forums and parts warehouses that say that these things don't fit properly. Well, O-ring wise, you're right. They don't seem to be the same. But here is the original one that came off, and I think it's made by something Tokai. So you know that's Japanese of some kind. And here's our new one, and this one is the one we chose. We could have chosen any one of those, because you can get them on eBay for 15 bucks, but we chose to pay $42 because it was close by, and we could pick it up next day at our local O'Reilly's Auto Parts. So we're going to try to go with that, because they got a pretty good return policy, as long as it's not an electrical part. So these are the rings that it comes with, and here's the line. Let's see the differences, clear up some of this controversy. I'm not going to break out a micrometer for you, but at least you can get an idea of what we're looking at here. So we got one line versus another line. Okay, we can automatically see that this one's got a notch cut in it, obviously for something to make room for something, and this one's a little thicker in diameter, at least it looks that way. No, it's not too much thicker actually. Look. It might be a little bit taller, No, it's not really taller. It's just that this one is beveled right here on the end, the original, and this one is not. So flat and flat. But it still has a relief cut in it right here for the port. If you look, can you zoom into that?
Yeah.
You see that relief? That's where it comes out, your fluid comes out right there in that relief port. And normally on the shaft of that pump, an O-ring would sit in there and stop that fluid from either spraying down or coming out of the nut area and let it circulate. But I think what they want you to do is seal the bottom and seal the top to the nut and the bottom to the
using those crush washers.
Using those crush washers. However, that nut is threaded and it's on a shaft. So I could see how power steering fluid would make its way out of the threads of that nut if that nut didn't have some type of
Sealer.
Anti-corrosive Teflon type sealant on it. Do you understand?
Gotcha.
So I could see why some people would say, look, this is not going to work. But it's possible that we can get it to work. We're going to have a go at it and see. This is the little fan shroud rub piece that they put on it, and here's the factory one that sat on it, on this one. As you can see, from the motor mounts, the engine moving around a lot, it wiggles this hose. Now this hose had a leak somewhere down here at the bottom, right around here. Right around where this fitting would be, because of age, time, and the engine moving around. But anyway, I'm going to not talk too much about that. I'm going to give you the facts here. And the facts are that this nut that came off the bottom is a keeper nut, and then there's a flare fitting that's on a steel line under the vehicle.
Actually, like I don't know if it's PVC or some kind of oil resistant plastic or something.
Wait, the nut is?
No, the line that the nut screws on with.
It shouldn't be. It should just be coated. It should be aluminum.
Oh, okay. Well, then it might be a coated.
Yeah, it's probably powder coated aluminum.
All right.
So what happens is this nut, this sits through a bracket. Then this keeper goes on. This lock washer goes on, and then this nut screws on after, all the way up to the top to hold the little 1/8 inch bracket in place, to hold this to the 1/8 inch bracket. Then that gives you the ability to screw your flare fitting on here, which is a female. It screws on it, pulls up solid end to end, and tightens up like any other flare fitting. So that's how this line comes off and goes on, and probably better to see it in action, but it's a little hard to film inside of the space we're working. But this can be gotten to right here from underneath the vehicle pretty easy without taking any extra parts off. And then the top here can be gotten to real easy, of course, because it's sitting right on top of the engine. So that's not a big deal. So what are we looking at? What size nut is this? I'm going to guess it's probably a 23 millimeter, but we don't have a 23 millimeter. So we used 13 16, something like that?
15 16.
15 16, sorry.
Wait, let me see. It's right here. It is, yeah, 15 16.
So we used the 15 16 for this nut to take it off. And then to take off the compression fitting is a 22 millimeter. So you're going to need at least a 22 millimeter, 15 16 open end wrench of good quality, and a 17 millimeter socket or wrench if you want to use one to take the nut off the top of this. And that's what you're going to have to go with. So you're going to need those 3 tools to get this line off. Hope that helps for a shortcut if you're thinking about, I don't know, if you even found one of these engines or one of these engines in a vehicle. Normally most of these engines have all been shipped back to Japan a long time ago to use in rice paddies and rice fields and different various equipments, boats, etc. They like using them in boats a lot in Taiwan and different countries. So a while back they took these 2.6 liters, which is actually the biggest 4-cylinder I've ever worked on in my life or ever owned. I haven't really seen a 4-cylinder bigger than this. 2.6 liters seems to be the biggest 4-cylinder.
Gasoline.
Gasoline, right. So I'm sure there are other 4-cylinders out there at some point somewhere in this world, but this is the biggest one that I've found so far. So, you know, its horsepower and torque rating are about equal, maybe a little bit more torque than horsepower as you would expect from an inline 4-cylinder. So about 120 horsepower, about what?
180 or 190 torque.
180, 190 torque.
But for a light vehicle.
Well, that's why they use them in boats. They can run them at a low RPM and certain farm equipment out there in these Asian countries because they can run them at a low RPM and they still produce the same torque. 1,000 RPMs, 1,500 RPMs. So this is on an Amigo, by the way. You can film the front grille or whatever. It's been a while since we've made a video on an Amigo. We have the same vehicle on our channel. It's due for a paint job any day now, but it's just a basic mud truck that's driven on the highway here and there. But yeah, even Troopers, I think 1990 Trooper 2 that came with a 2.6. Probably we would use the same line. You'd have to check into that and make sure. But I know the Passports and the Rodeos and the Pups and anything with this basic radiator support structure uses this power steering line, return line, or whatever it's called. I don't know if it's the high side or the low side. I think it's the high side. So it might be.
Comes from the top of the pump.
Yeah, I think it might be considered the return line. I think. I'm not sure. So I guess what we'll do is we'll find out. You see that bracket down there? There, it's very simple. That's the hole it goes through. That bracket's about what, 1/8 inch thick. It's held in by two 10 millimeter. It looks like two 10 millimeters on the frame.
Sort of flimsy, but strong enough to hold it.
Right. It's just a hold down bracket, and then there's your compression line down there. That's made out of. It could be a steel. It looks like steel that's powder coated, and then of course steel nuts and all that. And one thing to note on the new line is it looks like it's made out of aluminum and this is made out of steel. So the original is made out of steel and the aftermarket is made out of aluminum, like much of your brake lines today. So I don't know if I would go torquing on a torquing this like crazy down and count on it not, stripping threads or something at some point, but I don't think you should be cranking on it that tight.
No.
Just enough to stop it from leaking and put a little extra torque on it, and then that's about it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to clean this up. We're going to steal that jacket right here off of our old line. We're going to put it on our new line because I like this big foam cover, and we're going to put it on this new line and get rid of this cheap plastic flex shit and put this on there. And that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to put this on, and then we're going to see if we can get these crush sleeves to actually work. And if they don't work, then we're going to go back with some gerrymandering. Forgive me if your name is Jerry, but some gerrymandering set of types of O-rings. We'll have a various assortment of O-rings that are oil resistant, gasoline resistant, and probably power steering fluid resistant. I mean, obviously this AC Delco looking O-ring here looks like for an AC system held at the bottom, but this middle line here, if we have to, we'll replace this what looks like a middle O-ring. I mean, it looks like it possibly deteriorated over time. But if this is all we got, then this is what we're going to go with. I mean, we didn't have any leaks before from here. I imagine we'd probably get some at some point if we do something different with
Yeah, that needs to be replaced.
Well, they gave you, here's the funny part, they gave you a little plastic doodad right here. And I'm not really sure what it is. Hold this. They didn't give you any instructions with this thing. Did you get the part number for these folks?
Yeah, it did.
Just in case they want the import direct number or whatever it is. O'Reilly's has their own part numbers sometimes, but I think that's an interchange number that can be used. If not, you can always Google this. This is strange how this is made.
Did it have any holes in it?
No. It almost looks like you would I don't know what this is for, honestly. I don't see what you could actually use this for. It doesn't fit over this. It doesn't fit really in here. I thought maybe it was an O-ring protector. Like somehow you put this on and you use this to shuck the O-ring into place.
Maybe.
That's what I thought, but I don't think it is.
I just know that didn't come out of the old one.
No. So, I mean, you can't find parts. I mean, we're getting like Cuba. I mean, these guys had to rebuild their, 50s Chevys from drywall or spackle, whatever the hell they use for body work.
Clay.
They had to make their own engine parts out of steel because pretty much the same thing is happening to America. They're getting rid of everything we got parts wise and selling us subpar junk. They're definitely taking our steel and sending it overseas, and they're selling us crap back. So and they're getting everybody on this environmental kick. So you could easily go on YouTube right now, click off my channel and go on to somebody else's and find how scrapping is becoming a hobby now. Finding precious metals and selling them back to the scrapyard so they can send them off to foreign countries and sell a cheaper version of plastics back to us in different materials that isn't worth much back to the American market.
Not so environmentally friendly, as I like to call it.
Well, what they're trying to do is, I guess, what I'm seeing in my years of life is they are taking the good stuff and sending us temporary, planned obsolescence, subpar crap, and that's not good for us in the future. But anyway, you can stop that or pause it, and then we'll get to this and we'll get this line on here. Okay, so you can see we got our line. We're just we put our old sleeve on our new line, and we're gonna route that down in through that clamp. It'd be much easier to do this without a camera, but in the way.
So it's just routed down in that hole right there next to the battery.
Correct. That's not easy to see, but we'll get it down in there.
All we gotta do is get it to drop through that bracket hole.
Yeah, I know. Easier said than done with all this in our way, but this is so routine that we shouldn't even really be making a video about it, but you never know. There might be some poor soul out there that's like, hey man, let me consult with YouTube, you never know. Might wind up on Reddit or something like some of my other videos. Or there, look. All I had to do was bend the line with my hand, flex it with my hand, and then get it to go straight down. Now it's in the bracket, and normally this would route around like this. Look. Okay? Facing the back of the engine, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's about right, yeah. Yeah, that's how it came out.
Right, like that?
Yep, just like that.
What's funny is it seems a little bit long, like it's really close to this
regulator.
Really close. Well, let's see over here if it actually hits the water jacket housing. No. It does appear to be a little tighter than the other one. So we'll check on that later, but I almost wondered if maybe it goes sideways like this. Yep, it might sit against this as a bracket went over it, right? You think?
Yeah.
You pulled the other one off. Which way was it on?
I think it was more like that actually, because the first way you had it wasn't exactly right.
I see.
That was better.
Haynes told us.
Absolutely nothing about it.
No, Haynes told us the most important thing that we needed to know from the entire book.
Oh yeah. It's everything they love to say.
Installation. I think installation is the reverse of the removal.
Yes.
Is that what they say?
So they don't have to waste 2 pages telling you how to put it back on.
Right. So what does that mean? Pay attention to how the bitch came off. Yeah. Correct?
Right. The Haynes Reebok manual.
Right. So that makes sense how that would go on like that, right?
Yeah.
So it is binding a little in there. it's important to do this because when you go put the bottom on, you can't tighten that nut up and have this thing spun 180 out, because now my hose is trying to do all this.
Yeah, and then you got to twist the rubber that puts strain on it.
Right, you don't want to do that. So let's stop that video. Let's get the bottom secure on there and see where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay, right now I'm shining a light under the fender well, and you're looking at it from the bottom of the vehicle. This is right under the front end on the passenger side.
Pan shroud.
Now you can see that line that's powder coated. It looks like, it feels like it's steel, much like a transmission line. Here's a shortcut tip for you if you're replacing this. If you think it's as easy as pulling this line off, which is that nut, that compression fitting right there, counterclockwise, take it off, and pulling that other nut off and then putting the new one back on, it's not that easy. There's a step to this that makes it easier for you. What we just experienced proves that. Like any brake line or any transmission line, there's a spring tension to the line, a slight amount, that will throw you off and want you to cross thread these particular compression fittings. Just like brake lines, transmission lines, anything like that. It's the same concept. So that line, as soon as you remove it, it wants to spring right or left or up or sideways, slightly off, just enough to make it very hard for you to start the threads straight so you don't cross thread them. That's the difficult part, not to cross thread that. And so after fiddling it with this for about 30 minutes, and two of us, and one of us pulling the first starter thread off of that, we had a rough time. But we were able to get it because there's that top nut up there, which is the keeper nut for the bracket, which is right here. You can back this nut back down and put threads back on that colander, and this would be off, of course. Then you can take your old line and use this to rethread that, chase the threads. So once you chase the threads, here's a tip for you. Leave this keeper nut loose. Give yourself about a 1/16 of an inch of play inside this bracket. So leave it loose, then put this on and grab your line with the other hand and make an adjustment right to left, sideways. And if you make an adjustment right to left sideways, you can get the thread started by hand. And then you can get your wrench on there. And then you won't have to worry about doing what we did. And there's a tip for you. And I would advise to do that with just about any steel line that you're putting back on. Brake lines, transmission cooling lines, anything like that. Hydraulic lines, steering box lines that go to the steering box, anything like that that's steel. That's the kind of problem that you will have if they're not straight. And that line, like I said, the spring tension throws you off. Luckily there was a keeper nut on this to chase the threads backwards, and then we had the old steel line to chase the threads in that conical or that coned shaped compression nut. And we were able to get a new starter thread on there to get it started by hand. And that's the only way I see doing this properly the first time, is leaving that top nut loose, so you're not trying to bend the steel to your liking, but rather you're flexing the hose to your liking, which is much easier. Alright, that concludes the bottom end. Now we'll get to the top in a second. Alright, so first thing we'll do is check this O-ring right here, which looks like there's another O-ring that goes here. This was an O-ring. Looks like an AC O-ring that was put here. It's actually still intact. So apparently the green O-rings that you can get with AC systems, or universal, whatever you want to call it, looks like they hold up to fluid. So it looks like you have an O-ring at the bottom, very bottom, to seal up this section right here. Look, shine through here. See it? To seal up this bottom section here. And then this O-ring sitting in here mid mid O-ring, which is a very faint O-ring that's in there. You can see it.
Black.
Right. That sits pretty tight against this outer lip once it goes down. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute when you put this back on. Now you can see that compressed itself down to try to make a small O-ring like that. And then this was probably the excess that was smushed to try to hold it. And here's the brass washers that they give you. You look. And looks like one of them is bent. That's not pretty. Let's see what happens if I put the non-bent one on here. What does that look like? There, that's what it looks like. You can move it around, look at it play. That doesn't look very friendly, but it still, I imagine, whether it's off or not, it looks like it would still actually hold in place. See that?
Yeah.
But my problem is that this brass sleeve might actually push this too far up to seal this section right here. That's my fear. And it doesn't look like you have very many threads to work with already, because if you notice most of these, you take them off, you're not even using all the threads. I mean, on the nut itself. The nut is not all the way, it won't screw itself all the way down. Where's the nut at? Right here. So the nut won't go all the way down. Most of the time, what you see is the nut is pretty high. It's like that. On the other one, it was like that high.
It was.
That many threads were showing on the nut itself, or lack of threads on the stud. So how would we do this if we were to? My guess is we would try to find. I'm not going to use this. I'm just like the rest of the guys that are complaining. They don't want to use this shit, this crush sleeve, and I'm going to go with something else. Like I said, even if I did get this crush sleeve to work and this crush sleeve to work, I'm still stuck with the idea that at some point fluid might start to want to run past into my threads and seep out on the top of my nut. Get it?
Yeah.
Or my nut might want to vibrate loose as well. There's all kinds of things here.
Yeah, there's nothing locking that.
I mean, you could put Loctite on it or something. That might do it. Thread sealer. You know, clean it with some caulk cleaner or something and then Loctite it. That would stop fluid from coming through, but you got to stop it at the bottom too. So I'm thinking, let's look for an O-ring that might be suitable for this.
Yeah.
2 of them, actually. I'm going to put one at the top too and let this nut smash that one in as well.
It'll seal it in.
It should seal from the bottom and the top, and that's what we're looking for, right?
Yes.
Okay, so nothing fancy. Let's see. Okay, so we're looking for something to match this O-ring that was down. As you can see, it's cut like that. It's cut because it shaved off what it didn't use and acted as a bottom gasket, but then the O-ring on the side held, which is good, I guess. I mean, if it held for years since I've owned it, you know, obviously something like this AC O-ring would be the same, right? Looks about the same thickness.
Yeah.
We could use this, or we could try our hand at something smaller that might be more appropriate, that might fall in that groove and not shave as much off. But I don't know. These are supposed to be neoprene, but
Where are they from?
I don't know if these are Harbor Freight or not, but I know these are not. I know these are.
Four Seasons, I think, right?
It's probably one of them. AC
Something like that.
company. Let's see. I don't think they make O-rings, but it might have come with a compressor or something. Let's see. We could try the black one, or we could just, you know what? This worked, right?
Yeah, it did.
So guess what?
Go back with something that works.
Right. So I'm gonna put this guy on here. Get this all the way down. How's that look?
That's all the way down, I think, on all sides.
Yeah. It's gonna do one of two things. Smash it crooked and then leak, or smash it like a gasket. Correct?
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm doing. So I'm leaving this center piece alone because it seems to have held, and there's no real trash on there anymore. So let's get this in its place.
In its little hold down bracket position.
Right. And then you're going to kind of wiggle it down a little. It tends to want to give you some trouble. And then watch. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to do this. Shine it in there. Alright. Let me see. Here. Right here. What do you think of this?
Ah. A secondary seal at the top.
Is that a cheat, or should I not do that, or?
Well, I mean,
look at how many threads you have to work with on this stud.
Yeah, not many at all.
No.
Like 3 or 4.
That's it. That's all you're working with.
Gee.
So this line is firmly against here. This one's sitting against the air box, and what?
Sitting against the against frame, against the fan shroud, against the body of the truck. But
is this line at all right here intersecting with anything dangerous that'll cut it?
No. And that shield is protecting it against the body.
Got it. So worst case scenario, one day I'll wear a hole in my breather. I'm just saying. Let's see how this compresses down. How's it looking?
I don't see it popping out yet, anywhere.
You're not going to see it, but...
How's it feel going on?
Okay, I just don't want to put too much pressure on it. How's that look?
That smashed down a good bit. I don't see, I mean, like, not gasket-wise, but as in thread-wise.
Well, let's see what happened to my O-ring, huh?
Sure.
Is that where the O-ring was hitting right here?
Previous O-ring.
This O-ring right here.
Tried to pull it up that time.
Yeah, it spun itself with the threads.
Hmm.
Which means it sat pretty tight against the threads, huh?
Yes.
Did the threads cut into it?
No. I don't see any cuts. Do you?
I mean, I'm sure there's little micro cuts from the threads, but
no gashes.
No. So, this is what we're using. Let's see. Let's use it, and if we got any leaks, we'll just take this back off. We won't lose too much fluid, and we'll put another O-ring at the top.
That's a good plan.
Let it run.
O-ring at the top for an extra seal.
Right, I'm trying to get it to push down in that crack. See? And this gives me more threads. Can you imagine if I would have used this shit? Look. Both of these? What stud would I have had left?
Yeah, you would have had or hardly had any stud left.
Yeah.
Like one thread.
Yeah, that's not happening.
At least rubber gives you a little bit to smash down.
Alright. That's all the threads we got. That's about what we had before.
Yes.
And that's that. I don't see what else we can do. I know I'm making a big deal out of it, but not really. I mean, who wants this leaking on the side of the highway?
Well, here's a big deal out of it, but where can you find OEM parts anymore for this truck?
You can.
Exactly.
I mean, you can find Chinese stuff, but
You know how that goes.
Taiwanese stuff, and
There's always something different about every part. That's aftermarket.
all right, pause that. Let's fill it up. Let's see what happens. Looks like we got lucky so far the first time. We got no leaks right here. Nothing. It's not filling up right here through the threads. So far, so good. How about down here? That's old oil.
I don't see anything dripping so far. Gonna have to check under.
How about right here? That's just oil stains right there.
Right? I see no leaking right now. No. Yeah. Hey, what's up with the air in the line?
Well, you cock the wheel to the right and to the left a few times. And this thing was obviously up here when we put it in. Now it's at minimum. So you would spin the wheel a few times, see if it whines on you. And there's a discrepancy about what to use for fluid in here. And they tell you ATF, use automatic transmission fluid. But I say that if you replace it with an O'Reilly's pump, like I did this one, it usually a sure way to stop something from whining is to use their clear fluid, which is power steering fluid. And it does seem to do the job.
I hear the pump going a little bit. Not that loud, but I can hear it faintly.
What it doesn't like is a mixture of the two fluids. So if you're going to purge the system out, use one fluid or the other. My general rule of thumb is, and people might not like me saying this, but if something whines with ATF, purge it out by loosening a line somewhere and letting it leak in a pan, and fill it up with the clear fluid like this. And no, I'm not sponsoring O'Reilly's, and they're not sponsoring me. So this pretty much concludes our video. I mean, remarks. Like I said, underneath the truck is a little sketchy when it comes to being able to screw that flange fitting back on and get that flange correct. I mean, it's almost like a gas fitting or a transmission fitting or something like that. It wants to guide you in many different ways. So as much leeway as you can give it to be able to screw it in straight, start the thread straight by hand. And here's another rule of thumb: don't ever start it with one thread and let it get tight and think that you can go after it with a wrench, because if you do, you're going to wind up taking that first thread off and messing up the threads, and then you'll be in a shitstorm like we were. So I know this is easy, I know that many people do it, but I wanted to review the aftermarket line. So far, with doing the 2 O-rings that I did, we have no leaks. And I know those O-rings aren't put in the exact place except for the bottom O-ring. And we didn't replace the center O-ring. That's fine, because we have something sealing at the top and something sealing at the bottom. And really, fluid is traveling the way it's supposed to, and the power steering is working great. And we have no leaks. And we let it run for 20 minutes just now, and we're going to do some other maintenance on it, but so far so good. No leaks, nothing. So this concludes this video. If you have any Amigos, Troopers, we're going to do videos. Any Rodeos, Passports of the 1st gen and so on and so forth, or 2nd or 3rd gen Trooper, whatever it was. I think it's 2nd gen Trooper 2. Still the square body style, and as long as it has a 2.6 liter in it, 4-cylinder, we're going to be doing certain oddball things like this in the future, as we get closer and closer to doing a paint job on this truck and going through it again, because it's been 10, 12 years now, 11 years since 11 years since we've converted to 4-wheel drive and done all that, and it's still on the road now, and the mileage is climbing. But we're going to go into the engine later. We're going to adjust the valve, all the rocker arms, and go through that, and show you how to set the lash, because it's a solid lift. We're going to set those, and probably change the cam in this thing, and a few other things. We got a gasket kit, a cam. We got a whole top end setup for it. We'll probably put on it. If you want to go find guys that put turbochargers on these things, my channel's probably not for that. I know they do it, and I know they get a lot of horsepower out of these engines, more than some stock 350s or stock engines today with stage 3 turbos. We're not doing any of that fancy stuff. We're just worried about keeping this on the road as a mud truck. Alright, thank y'all for watching. God bless y'all. Subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Sometimes you get smart ass remarks, sometimes you get a God bless you. It's just a mixed bag of nuts. Thank y'all.